Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our meditation on the Psalm for this coming Sunday. This coming Sunday is June 21st, 2020. I'm John Ferry. I'm the pastor at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Fayetteville, New York. And this week's Psalm is relatively long. We have only the middle of the Psalm. Psalm 69 is usually classified as a psalm of individual lament. That is, it's the psalm of someone who is in some kind of personal suffering. And we are not going to go over the first part of the psalm, but what we would see there in verses 1 to 7 is that the occasion for this person's emotional pain is probably that they've been falsely accused of something. Now, that stings us in any circumstances, but in their culture, shame, reproach, insult was very harmful because they lived in what was called an honor culture, and any casting of aspersions or reproaches to your honor were considered practically deadly. And we can see later on in the psalm some of the effects that this person has suffered as a result. Psalm 69 is also very important because of its use in the New Testament. The picture it gives of someone who is suffering innocently because of false accusation was used by the gospel writers to describe Jesus' sufferings in the Passion. So you have some very direct quotations from the Psalm in the Passion narrative. You have the offering of the sponge when Jesus is on the cross comes from this Psalm. And also we'll see in our section of the Psalm the phrase the zeal for your house consumes me. And that is quoted when Jesus interrupts the business of the temple when he first comes into Jerusalem. So this is a very important psalm. Let's go through the middle part of the middle portion of the psalm, which we have for Sunday, verse by verse. I am treated like a stranger by my family, like a foreigner by my mother's children. One of the reactions to bringing shame of a person suffering shame is that they could bring shame on their entire family. And therefore, their family might very well throw them out, turn away from them. Jesus in the gospel for this Sunday says that father will turn against son, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law, the disruption of a family because a person would decide to become a disciple of Jesus. That would bring shame on their family. It would bring disruption because it would represent a turning away from the family values. And in their culture, unlike ours, where everybody makes their own life as an individual, in their culture, turning away from your family was a very, very serious issue. All because zeal for your house eats at me, and the reproaches that are directed at you fall on me. Now this begins to go beyond the personal. The singer of this psalm is committed beyond is committed somehow to upholding the honor of God as well as the singer's personal honor. And that gets them into trouble too. The reproaches that are directed at you fall on me. I may crush myself with fasting, but even that becomes a reproach to me. The signs of this commitment to God that this person has are themselves turned against them, so that they suffer more reproaches and more ridicule because they are seeking refuge in God in the face of this attack on their honor. I make my clothes out of sackcloth, but I'm still just a joke to them. Those who gather at the gate whisper about me, and the drunkards hum their tunes at me. So this person has become a laughingstock in their community, and that level of intense shame has a very detrimental effect on a person in that culture, as it does in other parts of the world even today, and in our world as well. Sometimes it seems like at least some of the more well-known people in our culture, in government, in entertainment, and in various leadership roles, sometimes seem shameless to us, like they have no shame. In their world, shame was a very real force. Now, this is different from the kind of shame that we may carry around. This is kind of public shame that other people point the finger at you and say, shame on you. That's different from the kind of shame that we may turn around, that we may carry around. Shame that comes from um, traumatic incidents or negative experiences that we had years and years ago, but that still live within inside us. That kind of shame is toxic and needs to be dealt with through forgiveness and self-forgiveness. But this what the psalmist is talking about is different from that. But my prayer is to you, O Lord, whenever you like, O God, in your great kindness, answer me in your trustworthy salvation. This is the key turning point in the psalm. The psalmist turns to God and says, it's all up to you. Uh, Answer me, uh, come to me because your salvation is trustworthy. When I trust in you, I know that sooner or later you will hear my prayer and answer. Rescue me from the mire. Don't let me sink. Save me from those who hate me, from the deep waters. This is an image that began at that was at the beginning of the psalm, the image of sinking in deep waters, and it's a very powerful image. When you've been shamed for something you haven't done, there's really no way, nothing you can do to help yourself, uh, except to hope that somehow you'll be vindicated, because you can't undo what you haven't done in the first place. So the idea of shame is something that this person can't rid themselves of. It's like sinking in deep water, sinking in mud. There's been so much mud slinging that they're sinking in the mud, and it's threatening to overwhelm them. And they can only cry out for help to God. Save me from those who hate me, from the deep waters. Let not the waters of the flood overwhelm me, or the deep swallow me up, or the pit close its mouth over me. All part of that same image. But once again, the prayer, answer me, O Lord, because your kindness is good. Turn to me in the abundance of your compassion. I think that would be a good prayer for any one of us to use on any given day. Answer me, O Lord, because your kindness is good. Turn to me in the abundance of your compassion. This is phrased in a personal way. It's me. It's about an individual, uh, and we all have individual hurts and pain that we can bring to God and ask God to turn to us and show us God's mercy and compassion. But we also have to remember, especially now in this time that we're living in, that we also have societal pain. We also have there are issues in our culture, in our society, that need God's kindness, that need God's compassion. There are people in our society that are crying out because they have been hurt so deeply. They've been hurt for many, many years, but now their hurt is becoming more and more apparent to those who have ignored it. So when we are confronted with the systemic racism in our society, in whatever ways that we personally and as a congregation and as a community are faced with it, we cry out to God that God would show God's kindness in helping us and in healing our culture, our society, our country. Do not hide your face from your servant. because I am hard pressed. Hurry, answer me. This is the urgency of someone who is in the middle of a crisis. And you could say that we all share the feeling of crisis right now. So we beg and we plead with God, do not hide your face from us. We are hard pressed. And we dare to say to God, because we can trust God, we dare to say to God, hurry, answer me. Come close and ransom me, redeem me because of my enemies. The word redeem is a very churchy word. We don't hear it much outside of our hymnody and our religious language and the scriptures themselves. But it's a very clear action that the psalmist is asking for here, because the Redeemer was the member of your family or the closest relative who could get you out of trouble. If you were a captive in war, they could pay a ransom. If you had, if you needed someone to stand up for you, they would do that. If you were in trouble, they were the ones who would rescue you. So here is the psalmist turning to God as their Redeemer, as the one they can plead with for rescue in a time of trouble. That also is something that we all have to do. We have to plead with God to redeem us, to redeem our broken world, our broken society, because we are in trouble and we are sinking. We are sinking in the mud, and that we need to begin to rise up. You know my reproach, my shame, my humiliation, my oppressors are right there before your eyes. Uh, Here's the psalmist recognizing that God can see all of this. In the gospel today, Jesus will say, those who deny me before others, I will also deny them. Uh, God knows our actions. God knows what we suffer. God knows the situation that we find ourselves in. And God knows when we are the oppressors. My oppressors are right there before your eyes. Um, a prayer like this could be prayed by someone whose son was just shot on the street. A prayer like this could be prayed by someone who struggles to understand why a loved one is suffering from dementia. A prayer like this can be prayed whenever we feel that edge of anger and that we know that we deserve justice, not shame, and that we plead with God to grant us that justice. There we are. Finally, reproach has broken my heart and made me sick. I had hoped for relief, but no, for comfort, but I haven't found any. We don't get to the part of the psalm where the psalmist does find some comfort and where the psalmist turns to God in praise and thanksgiving. Because of the tone of our gospel today, the psalm portion ends here. But notice, this kind of shaming, this kind of injustice, the kind of injustice that makes you feel absolutely helpless, has its physical effects as well as its emotional effects. Reproach has broken my heart and made me sick. That's why when injustice or shame is coming from inside us, we need to turn to God and ask for help. Sometimes we need to turn to a professional and ask for help because it can have a tremendous effect on our well-being and our physical health. But also when the cry for justice is coming from other people, we have to recognize what shame and injustice is doing to them and then respond with the compassion that God has showed us so that they do not have to conclude their prayer. I had hoped for relief, but no, for comfort, but I haven't found any. Let them find their comfort in us. God bless. Take care. Thank you for being with me tonight. And if you'd like to stay, you will hear the psalm tone for Psalm 69 from the Genevan Psalter. Good night.